Greetings everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. We're back again with more Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, and this time I wanted to walk through all the different races that are in the game. This is actually something that's been requested of me multiple times, just haven't gotten around to it yet. There are a lot of different options, and each option has more things that you can potentially select. So it's definitely worthwhile to go through it and have an understanding of what are the pros and cons of each of the different races. And I figured it'd also be nice to go ahead and pair this with a brief description of all of the race-specific classes that each of them have access to, because some of you might not be aware of some classes that are only available if you are running as a particular race. So let's go ahead and just dive right in. First and foremost, human, which is a fantastic choice. There are really no drawbacks with selecting a human. It's a great boost to any build that you're trying to do. First and foremost, they get the ability to add +2 to any of the ability scores. So there are other races where they have heritages and it'll give you a +2 and a couple of stats, but then it might also give you a negative score and another stat, and it just doesn't necessarily work the way you want to. So having the ability to just place +2 exactly where you want it and move forward is really nice. But what really helps when you're a human is that it is the only race that gets an additional feat at level 1. This is a huge boost for you in some builds that require a lot of feats in order to really get going. The one that immediately comes to mind is if you're trying to get to the point where you can demoralize an entire room of enemies just by killing one of them, you have to go through power attack, dazzling display, corner get smashed, blah, a whole bunch of feats before you really get to the point that you're able to crowd control large groups of people in one room. So playing the human really allows you to be able to get through those type of builds very quickly. You also get skilled, which is going to allow you to get an additional skill rank at first level and then one additional rank whenever you gain a level. So if you're playing the type of build where maybe you're trying to do a skill monkey and you want to have a lot of skills, or you're playing a trickster, which of course uses your skills as a way to boost a lot of your overall abilities, it's also nice being a human. Humans, for their specific class, get Imitator. So you can only play this class as a human, and it's under Slayer. Now, as an Imitator, you're going to lose some of the Slayer talents, and you're going to lose Studied Target, in addition to losing some of your sneak attack damage. And then finally, Slayer's Advantage, which helps you close in on enemies quicker over time. In exchange for all of that, you get Imitation. This allows you to take a fighter, barbarian, rogue, or monk stance for 1 minute, a number of times per day, equal to your intelligence modifier plus half the Slayer level. I'll be honest with you, I haven't played around with this at all. This sounds whack to me. I'll be completely honest. To me, it doesn't sound like exchanging Studied Target and half of your sneak attack damage along with some of your Slayer talents and the ability to close in on your enemies, exchanging all of that so that you can imitate the stance of another class, just doesn't seem like a fair exchange. But again, I haven't actually played with this class yet, so I can't give you a firm decision one way or another. If you're interested in being a human, this might be a class you want to check out. Next up is Elf. They are a fantastic choice if you're trying to play a wizard or some sort of spellcaster. They get a +2 in dexterity and intelligence, both of which is going to help you to be a better spellcaster. They do take a -2 in constitution, and honestly, I would recommend that you do not move forward with a character that has that -2, so you need to go ahead and dump a couple of points there to make up for that. But they get Keen Senses, which provides a +2 bonus on perception checks. This is absolutely fantastic. I recommend that you have as many party members as possible that have ranks in perception for a couple of reasons. One, when you're walking around with your team going through different dungeons, even if you have a person with sky high perception, sometimes they're just going to fail. And sometimes it's nice to have another person who can also do a perception check. Even if their score is not nearly as high, there's still a chance that it's going to succeed for them and that you'll go ahead and be able to uncover that secret area, that trap, or that secret chest that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise. And a lot of times they hold very, very valuable weapons, equipment, information, things of that nature. So it's not stuff that you want to miss. And then even more importantly, when you're out in the world map and you move your Crusader army around, it uses your team's perception check skill to determine whether or not it automatically finds secret areas that are around the area that it's traveling in. So if you have a team with multiple people that have high perception, a lot of times your Crusader army basically serves as almost like scouts. They go out, they'll uncover those secret areas, and then that prevents you from having to take your team manually through that same area to just figure out if your perception picks up anything. And it also cuts down significantly on any backtracking you might have to do. So having a team with multiple people that have really nice scores in perception is definitely advantageous. Not necessary, but very advantageous. Elf also gets a +2 bonus on caster level checks made to overcome spell resistance, along with a +2 on knowledge arcana skill checks. The knowledge arcana skill check, not really a big deal. You get multiple characters that are skilled in knowledge arcana that you could potentially take with you, but the +2 in overcoming spell resistance is really, really nice. Enemy spell resistance can get very, very high in this game, and especially towards the beginning, it can be very difficult to break through some of the resistances that they have. So being able to kick things off with that +2 bonus, it makes you a much more effective spellcaster. So definitely good stuff there. They have a +2 saving throw bonus against enchantment spells. Enemies use a lot of enchantment effects against you, but I would argue not really until late Act 3 going into Act 4. So this is great later on, but it's not something that at the beginning of the game you're really thinking about. They also get Elven Weapon Familiarity. You know, most of the time when I pick elves, I'm going spellcaster, so your mileage may vary about how much this actually matters, but it does give you proficiency with long bows, long swords, rapiers, and short bows, things of that nature. So a little bit more variety as far as the type of builds that you can run when you're an elf. And then they get different racial heritages that you can choose from if you so choose. So if you choose basic, it gives you everything that I mentioned before. Blightborn gives you a +2 saving bonus against necromancy spells and abilities. I don't think this is worth it because you lose the elven immunities and elven magic. And then Lore Master gives you a bonus on some of the different skill checks. Again, you're losing elven magic and your bonus to perception. I don't think either of these things are worth it. But if you're going for a particular type of playthrough, like maybe you want to be an elf lich, and so being Blightborn kind of falls in line with that, for role-playing purposes, it might make sense. If you're curious about what class goes with elf, it's actually under Magus and it's called Spell Dancer. So as a Spell Dancer, you're going to lose your arcane pool, and you're also going to lose some of the bonus Magus feats that you would usually get. You also lose arcane medium armor and arcane heavy armor. But in exchange for all that, you're going to get Spell Dance, which allows you to use 1 point from your arcane pool as a swift action to gain a +10 enhancement bonus to your movement rate and a +2 dodge bonus to AC against attacks of opportunity for 1 minute, and this increases over time. You're also going to get arcane movement, so whenever a spell dancer casts a Magus spell, he gains a competence bonus on mobility and stealth checks. So basically go into stealth, run around the area, messing people up completely. Dance of Avoidance means as long as you're wearing light armor or no armor, you gain a +2 insight bonus to AC. Most things that you get as far as items and buffs do not provide an insight bonus. They provide another type of bonus. So this should stack with most of the other things that you have. And then you also get greater Dance of Avoidance, which is going to increase that AC bonus to +4. So basically you get someone who's fast, dances around the battlefield, and can usually avoid enemy attacks. This looks actually kind of cool, fun. I wouldn't call it, it doesn't look especially powerful to me, but it can be nice for role-playing purposes depending upon the type of character you want to play. If you're going to be an elf, you might want to go ahead and check this out. Okay, so next up is Dwarf. Dwarves get a +2 in Constitution and a +2 in Wisdom while taking a -2 in Charisma. Charisma is only important if you're attempting to persuade people or if you're someone who can channel positive or negative energy. That does use your charisma score in order to boost that up. So you can kind of make a decision based upon the playthrough that you're doing, whether or not that actually matters to you. Now, your party members' charisma score and persuasion score can help your main character. So if you're in a conversation with someone and you have a bottom level persuasion score, but you have somebody else who has a sky high one, the game will take that sky high persuasion score and use it in conversations that you're having with other people. However, that only works when you're all in a team together. And I haven't played Act 5 or Act 6, so I don't know if there are major moments in the story where you're completely by yourself and you can only depend upon your own persuasion score to determine whether or not you can persuade a person. So right now, with the information that I have, I would say for your main character, usually you want to have at least a 12 or even a 14 in charisma and go ahead and increase persuasion just in case there are those really pivotal moments where you only have yourself to depend upon, and being able to persuade someone would really be beneficial. But if you don't care about any of that, none of that matters to you, then taking a negative score in charisma doesn't really matter. Dwarves are clearly meant to be tanks, the brutes, the right upfront fighters. So that +2 Constitution and Wisdom helps a lot. Constitution obviously helps your health, and then Wisdom is going to help a lot of your saving throws. So when people try to confuse him or put really bad statuses on him, this +2 is going to help him resist that. He gets Slow and Steady, which reduces your base speed, but it means your speed is not modified by armor or encumbrance. This is actually kind of bad, kind of unfortunate. All right. Encumbrance, in my opinion, is not a big deal at all in this game. You get bags of holding that are going to allow you to carry a lot more. And if you have pets on your team, they're going to increase the amount that you're able to carry as well. But armor, it weighs you down, but I don't think it weighs you down to the point that you get that base speed of 20. So I feel like that 20 is a little bit less than what I experienced with Sela. So your mileage may vary. The problem with this is you kind of want that frontline fighter to just be running out, charging into the group of enemies before you. If he's slower, that means that the enemies are able to get closer before he engages with them, creating a situation where there's a greater chance they might go around him, or that maybe one of your off tanks gets to the enemies before your real tank gets there, things of that nature. So if at all possible, you're probably going to want to put something on your Dwarf that helps them really just charge out there and get into the fight, or just flat out use charge, which is going to help with this as well. He also gets Stability, which is +4 racial bonus to CMD when resisting a bull rush or trip attempt. There are a bunch of enemies in the game that trip. I've never seen an enemy try to use bull rush. And regardless, I've never been in a situation where I really felt like I needed more CMD. But of course, that's all based upon the beta. In the full game, maybe there are more enemies that try to bull rush or trip. And so this could be very good. Regardless, it's obviously something good to have in your tank. Hardy is really nice. It gives you a +2 racial bonus on saving throws against poison, spells, and spell-like abilities, all of which are going to happen plenty to you and all of your characters. So having a tank out front with a +2 bonus against these type of effects, really helpful. They get defensive training for giants, so they got a +4 dodge bonus to AC. This is also absolutely fantastic. Plenty of giants in the game. This is going to help you. They get a +1 bonus on attack rolls against orcs and goblins. This is all right. Most of the enemies you face in this game are demons, at least the ones you really need to worry about. but there are some orcs and goblinoids in there, so, you know, it's nice to just throw that in there. I've already mentioned how great perception is. Dwarven weapon familiarity, so they automatically treat dwarven weaponry, battle axes, heavy picks, and warhammers as martial weapons. This is cool. There's a lot of great dwarven weapons in the game. Just note that this feat allows you to treat them as martial weapons, which does not mean that dwarves will automatically be able to use them. It still means that you need to choose a class that gives you martial weapon proficiency. So if you don't choose a fighter or something else that gives you that proficiency, you still will not be able to use dwarf weapons. I want to make sure that's clear to everybody. But if that's something that you're interested in doing, again, there's plenty of them out there. A lot of really, really nice dwarf weapons in the game to pick up. So it's well worth having that martial weapon proficiency so that you can go ahead and do that. And then they do get a couple of other heritages. So the basic one is the choices you've already selected. Barrel Dwarf gives you a +1 attack rolls and dodge bonus to AC against undead, along with a bonus on lore religion checks. I personally don't feel that that's worth losing the perception if you're going to specialize in that and the defensive training and hatred, but your mileage may vary. And then you also have Unstoppable Dwarf, which gives you endurance and a +1 racial bonus on fortitude saving throws. Again, I would say this is not worth it as long as you're playing on normal. If you're playing on some of the harder difficulties, you have to put a lot more effort into what you do for your tank. And from what I've heard on Unfair, it might not even be worth having a tank. You have to completely change your mindset about what it means to be defensive. So this might make more sense on those higher levels, but on normal, I would say that no, you should just go ahead and stick with the basic setup. Now, as far as the class that's specific to a dwarf, whoo, it is a doozy. You get Stone Lord, which is under Paladin. So let's go through this. There's actually a lot to it, as you can see. You're going to lose the level 20 Paladin option, Holy Champion, which would have increased your damage resistance considerably. And whenever you channel positive energy or use the Lay on Hands to heal a creature, you would have healed the maximum amount possible, which of course is nice. You completely lose Smite Evil. Don't get any of those. You lose the Mercy. So all those Lay on Hand options that you get, you lose that as a Stone Lord. You also lose Divine Grace, which would have taken your Charisma bonus and applied it to saving throws. You also lose Divine Health, which makes a Paladin immune to all diseases, supernatural, magical diseases, and mummy rot. So that all sounds horrible, I'm sure. But in exchange for that, you get Stone Strike. Once per day per Paladin level, a Stone Lord can drop on the power of the Living Rock. As a swift action, you treat your melee attacks at the beginning of your next turn as magical and adamantine, with +1 bonus on attack and damage rolls. And this increases over time. Then you also get Heartstone. Stone Lord's flesh becomes progressively rockier, a +1 natural armor bonus to AC and damage resistance. The natural armor bonus increases over time. You get Stone Blood. A Stone Lord's vitals begin to calcify and her blood transforms into liquid stone. You gain a 25% chance to ignore a critical hit or precision damage. This does not stack with fortification armor or similar effects, but it doesn't need to. It becomes 50% at 9th level and you become immune to petrification. And then at 15th level, it becomes 75% and you become immune to bleed. Bananas. Bananas. Defensive stance, which is actually something that's available at other classes as well, but you can maintain this stance number of rounds per day equal to 4 plus your constitution. Definitely want to have a high constitution with this. While in this stance, you gain a +2 bonus on melee attacks rolls, melee damage rolls, thrown weapon damage rolls, and will saving throws. And in addition, you gain a +2 dodge bonus to armor class and 2 temporary hit points per hit dice. You also get Stone Bane. When using Stone Strike, which you got from here, you now gain the Construct Bane special weapon ability. You gain Heartstone. So, this is just the increase to natural armor bonus that we mentioned before. You also get defensive powers. So you get specific defensive options that you can go ahead and select. as you level up. Craziness. And then finally, at 20th level, a Stone Lord's body transforms into living stone. She no longer needs to eat, drink, breathe, or sleep, and she becomes immune to paralysis, poison, and stunning. She also becomes immune to critical hits and precision damage. Holy smokes. Holy smokes. And all of that defensive proficiency is paired with a class that has a high base attack bonus. So if you give this character the right type of weapon, you've basically got a stone slab you can throw in the midst of the fight, and they will be able to stand their ground while doing very, very solid damage to whoever they're going up against. Stone Lord is crazy. Moving right along. Next up is Gnome. So they get a +2 to Constitution, they take a -2 to Strength, and they get a +2 to Charisma. So this makes Gnomes great options if you want to roll a Sorcerer or some other type of spellcaster. This +2 to Strength, completely irrelevant. You can dump Strength when you're playing caster characters, you know, of course, as long as they're not supposed to be using melee weapons. There's no defensive disadvantage to that. The only thing to keep in mind is you can die if your ability score is reduced to 0. So you already take a -2 here. If you dump Strength further, I think you can get it down to 5, which, you know, kind of can put you at risk a little bit. But I feel like the easy way to do it is by the time you get to spell level 6, one of the people on your team should have the option to give a strength buff to everybody on your party for +4. And so by doing that, you're going to give a nice buff to the gnome to ensure that he or she is not going to be susceptible to those type of abilities. But that doesn't really come up until, more, again, late Act 3, Act 4. That's when you get a lot more enemies that are targeting your attribute scores. So to start out with a character that's completely dumped to Strength, no problem whatsoever. You're all good. They get that +2 to Perception I've already talked about. They also get a +1 bonus on attack rolls against reptilian and goblinoid subtypes. Again, like I said, the vast majority of who you face is demons, but you do face other creatures every so often, so it's nice having that against them. +4 dodge bonus, the same as dwarves against giants. That's cool, but you're not really supposed to be in melee range of those types of creatures anyway. So hopefully, if you're playing right, this will not come into play all that often. Illusion resistance is cool. +2 racial bonus against illusion spells and effects. So you definitely have some enemies that are going to use illusion spells against you. It's nice to have some defense against it. But the real claim to fame for gnomes is that they have that +1 to the DC of any saving throws against illusion spells that they cast. That means gnomes are better than any other class at successfully getting illusion spells to apply against your targets. You get Nanio, who's a party member who specializes in illusion magic. She's absolutely fantastic at it. You can make a better illusion mage than she is. They start her out with a feat she doesn't really need, and a couple of other things that you could do differently. Not to mention that she's not a gnome, but she is fantastic at it. So you can make your own decision about whether or not it's really worth your time for your party to make an illusion mage, based upon maybe you don't even want to have Nanio in your party, or you just love the spell type and you want to play around with it. They also get Obsessive, which gives them a +2 racial bonus on knowledge world checks. All the skills are important, so it's nice being able to specialize in a particular one, but you know, nothing to write home about. Slow movement, but it doesn't matter because they're in the back, so who cares? And then they also get a couple of different racial heritages. Traveler, I would say, is worthless. It increases your base speed and gives you a +2 racial bonus on lore nature. It's worth it, I guess, if you, for whatever reason, you're using a gnome in melee combat. Maybe you want to bring that speed up. I don't know why you would do that, but you know, you got the option. But otherwise, I would say this is not worthwhile. Pyromaniac can be worth it if instead of using illusion magic, you would prefer to have a fire mage, someone who could do some fire damage. they're going to get resistance towards fire, and then a +1 bonus on DCs of spells with the fire descriptor, which means that fire spells that have a reflex saving throw are going to do much better against enemies. So things like Fireball, for instance, are going to be more successful. If you're curious about the specific class that's available only for gnomes, it's actually under Arcanist, and it's called the Phantasmal Mage. I'm not going to go through all the mechanics here because I actually already did a build video for it. So I'll leave a link to that build video. If you're interested in how it works, I would definitely recommend checking it out. I think the class is absolutely fantastic, and is also another reason why you're able to make a better illusion mage than Nanio is. You get some things here that Nanio doesn't automatically get. She would have to take some additional feats and do some additional things in order to be able to get some of the things you have naturally available just within the class. So really, really good stuff. Next up is Halfling. Like gnomes, they take a -2 on strength, and it works a little differently with them. With gnomes, you're probably going to be a spellcaster, but with halflings, more than likely, you're going to be someone who's maybe using daggers or maybe an archer. Archers most especially can take advantage of strength if you're using composite bows. But I would venture to say if you're using a halfling, you're probably not going to be bothered with anything that helps you as far as strength. So again, you can dump strength in this situation without really worrying about anything, as long as you're okay with the loss and damage that you could potentially get from having a higher strength score, even if your main attribute is dexterity. So it kind of depends upon your build, what kind of weapons you're using, etc., etc. So just make sure you're reading carefully, or just ask a question on my page on one of my videos if there's some information I can give to help you figure out your build. They also get a +2 to charisma, so it doesn't help you well, I guess if you are playing as a cleric with this class, it would help you channel energy, but most especially if you want to specialize in persuasion, having that addition in charisma is going to help you. Halflings' claim to fame, they are fearless. So they get a +2 saving throws against fear from fearless, but then in addition, they have halfling luck, which gives you an additional +1 on all saving throws that does stack with the +2 that you get here. So they start out with a +3 overall saving throw against fear. That's actually really, really great. In the first 2 acts, and really the beginning of the 3rd act, fear is the main way enemies use to try to disrupt you. It's in the latter half of Act 3 and beyond where they get much more into the enchantment spells, using Insanity, Song of Discord, and things of that nature to try to disrupt you. So being able to start out the game fearless against these enemies, really, really great. Slow movement, but whether or not that actually matters depends upon the build. You could be using archer, it wouldn't matter then. They get a +2 racial bonus on athletics and mobility checks. The athletic part doesn't really matter more than likely, because that's paired with strength, and more than likely your strength score is not going to be nothing to write home about. But the mobility part is very nice. You're probably going to be increasing dexterity, which of course is paired with mobility and is going to increase it. So you can get some really, really nice high mobility scores with halflings, which actually helps a lot with the specific class that they get as well. We'll dive into that in just a minute. They get +2 to perception, and they get a couple of racial heritage options. So they get hasty, which is going to cause them to lose sure-footed and fearless, but their base speed increases to 30 feet, and they gain a +2 bonus on initiative rolls. If you are playing in turn-based for most of your time during your playthrough, getting a +2 bonus on initiative rolls is huge, huge. In turn-based, the name of the game is you want as many of your party members to have a turn before the enemy. And I'm talking about the very, very first turn. What happens in that first turn can oftentimes determine the course of the entire battle. If 3 or 4 of your party members are able to go before the enemy goes, you can wipe out a ton of them. You can crowd control a ton of them. You can do a bunch of really, really nasty things to them. and they'll just be standing around not being able to do anything about it. So that +2 bonus on initiative, especially if you combine it with a background selection like Pickpocket, I think, which is going to then stack an additional +2 bonus on initiative rolls, you could create a character that's going to get the jump on everybody, especially when you stack that with the high initiative you're going to get from your high dexterity score anyway. In real time with pause, it doesn't work out quite as cleanly. It's still nice to be able to get the jump on enemies, but you don't feel it as much. The enemies are kind of going the same time as you. It doesn't work out quite the same way, but initiative is nice either way. Then you also have the Craven option. So you're going to lose your Halfling Luck, the Fearless bonus, and you gain a -2 penalty to saving throws against fear. But you gain a +2 ratio bonus on reflex saving throws. And if your character would become frightened, you become shaken instead. My personal opinion, this is garbage. Hot garbage. The only way I could see you taking this if maybe you wanted to role play as a craven, cowardly halfling, which honestly could be really, really funny. But other than that, I don't think this will be worth it at all to try to create a competent character. If you're curious about which class is specific to the halfling race, it is actually under Chevalier, and it is the Chevalier of the Paw. So, Chevaliers of the Paw, they lose the ability to choose their order, because obviously you're of the Order of the Paw. But in exchange for that, they gain, you lose the ability to have an animal companion as a horse, because of course a halfling is not going to fit on the horse. So instead you have to take a dog or a wolf. I don't think this is really a downgrade at all. I prefer the wolf over the horse anyway, because the wolf is automatically going to do trip every time they attempt to bite. You can absolutely create builds specifically that revolve around making that trip as effective as possible and keeping all of your enemies that you're going up against on the ground. In addition, whenever an Order of the Paw Chevalier issues a challenge, his mount gains a +1 dodge bonus to AC as long as it is threatening the target of the Chevalier's challenge and the Chevalier is riding the mount. And this increases by +1 over time. You also get Danger Ward. The Chevalier can ready his allies for impending danger. So all allies within 30 feet gain a bonus on a saving throw. And if they happen to fail that saving throw, they can re-roll it with a +4 competence bonus as an immediate action. Very, very nice. Again, as you get later into the game, even at the beginning of the game, enemies are going to try to put fear on you. But later in the game, you're going to experience them trying to put some really, really nasty spells on your party members. And so being able to re-roll a saving throw that you failed is very nice. They also get Canine Ferocity. So whenever the Chevalier uses his wolf or dog mount to perform a bull rush or overrun maneuver, the mount gains a +4 bonus on the combat maneuver. And then you also have a selection of some different feats that you can take. Now, the mount feats, just about all of them are great. I don't see why you would use bull rush or overrun if you're riding a wolf, to be completely frank, but your mileage might vary. And then finally, you also get Giant Slayer. When the Chevalier hits the target of his challenge with a melee attack, and that target is at least large size, he gains a bonus on damage rolls equal to half his Chevalier level. This damage is multiplied on a critical hit. This is huge, because when you get to Act 4, and from everything I've heard, Act 5 and Act 6, a lot of the major bosses you face are a very, very large size. Some of them are even larger than anything else you've ever faced in the game. So being able to get an automatic damage bonus that's multiplied on a critical hit against some of the hardest enemies in the game is a big advantage for you. So with all that together, I would say that this is a very strong class and something that you should seriously consider if mounted combat is something that interests you. A couple of things that aren't clear from here. When you are doing mounted combat, your mobility score is very, very important. So the fact that the halfling starts out with that buff and then can increase it to very high levels from there helps a lot with mounted combat. And then second thing, I haven't experienced this myself because I haven't played through the whole game, but from what I've heard looking at some of the reviews, there are a lot of sections, even past Act 4, where you're kind of in cramped quarters and, corridors, hallways, things of that nature that make mounted combat very difficult to do. It's the mechanics are clean, it's implemented properly, but there are a lot of sections in the game where it's just difficult to do mounted combat properly. And so that's something to consider if you're going to choose a class that specifically revolves around mounted combat. There may be some times where it's just more effective for you to jump off the mount and handle things yourself. That doesn't bother me. I still want to just try mounted combat because it just sounds like so much fun, but your mileage may vary. Let's move on. Next up is Half Elf. So like humans, they can add a +2 to one ability score, and they get the same options that elves get as far as a +2 bonus to perception and a +2 to racial saving throw bonus against enchantment spells. Nice stuff. And then they get an option of a couple of different racial heritages. They have Kindred Rays, which causes them to lose their perception bonus. And wait a minute. Huh. Oh. Okay. Weird. So, used to be in the beta that adaptability was listed here so that everybody knew half elves had it. But apparently they took that out. So, you have Kindred Rays, which causes you to lose keen senses, your perception score, and then your elven immunities, and then also adaptability, which is going to help you to increase your skill ranking in one particular skill. It gives you a skill focus bonus. But in exchange for all that, they gain a +2 racial bonus to charisma. I only see this as worth it if you're playing as a sorcerer and you want to combine it there. Then, of course, charisma is a big deal. But otherwise, I don't think this is worth it. And then you also have dual heritage. So you lose the ability to increase that skill and you lose your +2 to perception, but you gain that +2 racial bonus on will saving throws and elven magic that the elves have that give them a bonus on caster level checks made to overcome spell resistance. So obviously this is really nice if you want to be a spellcaster, a wizard or a sorcerer or a magus of some sort. But if you go the basic route, you get adaptability, which is going to allow you to choose a skill focus as a bonus feat for your first level, and you can put it in any skill that you like. So which one of these works the best for you, of course, depends upon what type of build you want to run. I personally think basic is the best one to go with if you're going to go with the only class that is specific to half elf, which is under rogue, and it's called Master of All. So with Master of All, you lose some of the sneak attack damage that you get as a rogue, but in exchange for that, you get Bardic Knowledge, which allows you to add half your class level to all knowledge and lore skill checks, and you may make all knowledge and lore skill checks untrained. And then in addition to that, you're going to get skill focus at 3rd level and every 6 levels afterwards as a feat to be able to apply to a particular skill. Now, that all probably sounds kind of weak. You may be like, this is just a skill monkey. You're not going to be able to do particularly good damage. Is it really worth it? I think this class is absolutely perfect to pair with Trickster, which of course depends a lot upon how many skills that you have, but also Trickster automatically gives you more sneak attack damage. So it's going to make up for the lack of damage that you're experiencing here while taking full advantage of the wide repertoire of skills that you have available. You can create a really, really powerful class, powerful build combining this with Trickster if that's something that you're interested in. So I would definitely recommend you go ahead and check this out. Don't overlook it just because it's something that focuses on skills. Okay, next up are half orcs. Like humans and I think half elves, they get to take a +2 bonus to one of their abilities, and they get skill just like humans. And then the claim to feign intimidating. +2 racial bonus on persuasion checks when used to intimidate due to their fearsome nature. This is huge when you're playing as strength-based warriors who are trying to use intimidation and demoralizing their enemies as a way to crowd control entire rooms. Half-orcs get a natural bonus on these type of buffs, along with, of course, being set up to just take full advantage of everything those particular builds provide. This is absolutely fantastic. And then you also get orc weapon familiarity. So they're proficient with great axes and falchions, and then treat any weapon with the word orc in its name as a martial weapon. So there are orc double swords in the game. Just keep in mind that unlike a great axe that you can basically just pick up and use and it's all good, with those orc double swords, they're treated as two weapons. So you need to take 2 weapon proficiency, or you're going to take, I think, like a -4 penalty to attack when you're using them. And I don't know how it works in the full game, but in the beta, that wasn't really clearly spelled out when you were using those type of weapons. So you would have had to actually look in the log at your attacks after missing a bunch to figure out, oh, this is why I'm having so much trouble attacking enemies. So something to keep in mind. Then they also get orc ferocity. So if a half-orc is brought below 0 hit points, but not killed, they can fight on for 1 more round as if disabled. And then if at the end of the next turn, they're not brought above 0 hit points, they'll fall unconscious. So this is absolutely great, again, for someone who's right up front, fighting in the midst of the danger and potentially tanking for your party. It's going to give you a buffer for your tanks to step in and keep him or her upright. So really nice stuff. And then they get a +2 bonus on perception checks. Very nice. You have a couple of different options as far as heritage. Tribal causes you to lose the ability to stay up after being reduced to 0, and you lose your perception bonus, but you gain a +1 luck bonus on all saving throws and a +2 ratio bonus on Lord nature checks. I would say this isn't really worth it. Your mileage may vary. And then there's human raise, which is going to give you an additional skill point. Why are you focusing on skills as an orc? So of course there are builds that might make use of it, but I certainly wouldn't recommend it. If you're curious about the class that is specific to half-orc, it's actually under Shaman, and it's the Wildland Shaman. So as a Wildland Shaman, you lose the ability to choose your own spirit, and therefore you also lose the ability to choose your own spirit animal, and you lose the ability to form a temporary bond with another spirit besides the one that you've selected. So they lock you into taking the battle spirit, which is going to give you some specific buffs or things that you can use as you're leveling up. And then they also give you access to an animal companion. And you have, doesn't look like the full list of animal companions available, but it's a very, very nice list and a lot of variety here in what you can select. So you can decide if this works for you. Me personally, I don't like this. I don't like that this is the class that they have chosen to tie in with orc. To me, with an orc, you're this big, massive person. You should be picking up a weapon and absolutely shattering your enemies. Why are you paired with a class that has an average base attack bonus and gets max level spells? Like, orcs aren't known as spellcasters. You know, correct me if I'm wrong. Low fortitude? Come on now. This is not an orc. This is not what an orc stands for. To me, their main race class should be somewhere else in this list, and they should have created a class that really allows you to throw on some heavy armor, pick up the biggest blade you can carry, and absolutely go to town against enemies. And that's not this, but your mileage may vary. I know a lot of you love shamans, and of course pets are absolutely fantastic in this game. So if this seems like something that would appeal to you, by all means, go ahead, dive in. Aasimars, they get Light Halo, which is a +2 circumstance bonus on saving throws against becoming blinded or dazzled. I can't ever remember a time where my party members were dazzled, but blinded happens all the time in Acts 1 and a little bit in Acts 2. Acts 3 through 4, 3 through 4, since those are the only ones I've been able to play, they find much more harmful statuses than blinded to put onto your characters. And then you also get celestial resistance. So for acid, cold, and electricity, you have resistance 5. Now, the way this class works is you've got several different heritages that you can choose from. And all of them are a different combination of buffs to your attributes, to your skills, and then you get an additional spell that you can use once per day. So I'm not going to go through all of them because honestly, it completely depends upon what type of class you want to play and what you're trying to do. But as you can see, there's a lot of variety here, a lot of different options that you can play with. Choose for yourself what's actually going to work for you. If you're curious about what class is specific to the Aasimars, it's Purifier, which is under Oracle. Now, as a Purifier, you lose some of the Oracle's revelations, which basically add different abilities that you get from your mystery. And you also lose some of the additional spells that oracles gain as they go through levels. But in exchange for that, you get Sacred Scourge, which allows you to channel holy power as a cleric of your level to harm evil outsiders. You may use this ability a number of times per day, equal to 1 plus your charisma modifier. Your charisma as an oracle should absolutely be sky high, and you're going to face a lot of evil outsiders in this game, so this is definitely worthwhile. And then at 11th level, a Purifier can consume a curse, enchantment, or emotion effect by touch as a full round action. She can do this a number of times per day, equal to her charisma modifier, and must make a dispel check with a bonus equal to your charisma modifier against the effect. If the check succeeds, the effect is negated. However, the Purifier is sickened for 1d4 rounds. This is actually really, really nice. I'm thinking specifically, there's a spell called Song of Discord that enemies can use against you. Trying to dispel that is maddening. Absolutely maddening. I had an item on Ember. You know what? I take that back. The item was supposed to add a plus 20 to any the spell attempt that she made, but I think it was broken in the beta. But trying to dispel that effect and some of the other major enchantment effects that enemies use against you was maddening for me. So having a character like this that could just step up, do a full round action, and basically dissolve the problem, really, really nice. This is definitely a strong ability. And then you also get Celestial Armor. So a Purifier's armor takes on a golden or silvery sheen and becomes light as a feather. She also gains armor training as a fighter 4 levels lower than her Oracle level. At 11th level, a Purifier gains heavy armor proficiency. So this is someone who's built for problems, who's built to handle the serious issues. Armor proficiency from armor training from fighter, I believe, increases the amount of your dexterity modifier that will be taken to account for your AC when you're wearing heavier armor. So increasing dexterity, having celestial armor, and then increasing charisma, she's going to be, she or he is going to be someone who can stand right in the middle of things, heal up your enemies, and just flat out dissolve major issues that they're dealing with. Great, great stuff. This is absolutely a solid choice if you're trying to create a healer, someone that you can easily pair with Angel. Really nice. Next up is Tiefling. They do not get the ability to just add a +2 to their attribute points. They get Fiendish Resistance. So for cold, electricity, and fire, they get Resistance 5. And then they get different heritages that you could potentially take advantage of. So it, for the most part, works just like Aasimar, where it's a combination of different attribute buffs and buffs to specific skills that you get, along with a power that you can use once per day. The main difference is that Tieflings often come with a penalty in addition to the bonuses. So with Aasimars, it's all just bonuses, whereas you'll see here, the Tiefling who takes this would take a -2 penalty to wisdom, things of that nature. Recognize that on some of them, they have a penalty to charisma, for example, with Hellspawn. So you get a +2 racial bonus to Constitution and Wisdom and take a -2 penalty to charisma. However, they do not suffer a penalty to their charisma if they have levels in Sorcerer or Eldritch Scion of an Infernal bloodline. And I think there's at least one other one that has similar verbiage about the, yeah, here we go. If you're just a regular Tiefling, same deal. -2 penalty to charisma. The only difference is to take off that penalty, you have the option of being a sorcerer or Eldritch Scion of an abyssal or infernal bloodline. So really, really cool stuff. Really leans into, hey, you're supposed to be evil as this particular individual. Also, just one quick note for those of you who like playing with characters who have natural weapons, if you choose Motherless, you gain a secondary bite attack that deals 1d6 damage. And bite attacks can be stacked. So you can get bite attacks from, 2, 3, 4, 5 different classes, and they're all stacked together to give you 5 attacks when you're attacking with your natural weapons. So definitely something to consider when you're trying to put together your natural weapon builds. As far as the class that is specific for Tiefling, from a role-playing standpoint, I really, really like this. It's a Reformed Fiend. It's under Blood Rager. The teachings of Light God say that everyone deserves the right to redemption, everyone except the demons. Reformed Fiends are demons who have entered on the path of good. So I feel like you could play a Reformed Fiend who's basically going on the same path as someone else. Another party member that you get who, is trying to seek redemption and reform, and you could potentially have a ball with this as an Azada. I'm not going to go through all the mechanics as I actually already created a build for Reformed Fiend, so I'll leave a link for it down below in case you're interested in checking this out, but I definitely recommend it. I think the mechanics are really, really powerful, and you can create a really cool character going through this. Next up is Oread. They have slow movement, just like dwarves. They get a +2 to perception. They have energy resistance 5 against acid. And then they also get an increase to saving throw DC against acid spells by 1. So you could potentially use Oreads as spellcasters and specialize in using acid spells. I gave serious thought to combining this with the elemental specialist that you get under Wizard. To make all spells that I cast acid and then have the Oread throwing them out, definitely an option. Really, really cool stuff available here. And then as far as heritages, I'll be honest with you, I feel like they should really add more. It feels weird that there's only these 3, especially since they prevent you from just adding a +2 to a particular attribute on your own. So they get a +2 bonus to strength and wisdom and a -2 penalty to charisma, and they can use a stone fist spell every day. So obviously this is the heritage they expect you to use if you're playing as a monk, and it definitely folds in nicely with it. You could decide for yourself if this -2 penalty is something you need to make up for when you get to ability scores. Then you also have Iron Soul, +2 bonus to Constitution and Wisdom, and a -2 penalty to Dexterity while being able to use Lead Blades every day. And then finally, Gem Soul, a +2 bonus to Strength and Charisma, and a -2 penalty to Wisdom, being able to use Color Spray every day. The problem that I have with this is I feel like there's no heritage that really sets you up for success as far as being a spellcaster. And I don't feel that way with any of the other builds. Now, mind you, I don't know much about Oreads, so maybe they're not meant to be spellcasters. Maybe, like, obviously they're made of rock, so obviously they focus really on physical attacks. But I feel like, I mean, heck, going back to Half Orc, the main class that they chose for that has nothing to do with picking up a heavy weapon. So it seems weird to me that they don't give you a heritage that at least allows the flexibility to create a competent spellcaster if that's what you really wanted to do. But I digress. In case you're interested in what is the class that is specific to Oreads, it's actually Student of Stone, and it's right here under Monk. I'll be honest with you, I'm not impressed with the class, but I'll read through it and maybe you all can tell me down in the comments what I'm not seeing about this. So you're going to lose some of your key powers, which are powers monks can use on themselves to kind of boost themselves up, give them more defensive capabilities or a little bit of offensive as well. And then you also lose some of the bonus feats that monks get. And you lose all of the evasion that monks get as well. In exchange for all this, the monk the students of stone get a bunch of things spread out around here. So you get hard as stone. Whenever an opponent rolls to confirm a critical hit against a student of stone, treat the students of stone's AC as +4 higher than normal. That is definitely very, very nice. I forgot, I'm sorry. They also lose fast movement. So you would have gained a +10 enhancement bonus to your base speed. You lose access to that. You gain a stone of student bonus feats. So this makes up for some of the feats that you lack. And then Bones of Stone. As a swift action, the student of stone can spend 1 key point to gain damage resistance 2 against everything except magic until the beginning of his next turn, and this increases and changes also to chaotic over time. And then Body of Stone. The student of stone gains the benefits of the light fortification armor property. I don't know specifically what light fortification armor property means, but it's there. You get it adds 1 additional monk bonus feat. You get Soul of Stone. As a swift action, a student of stone can spend 1 key point to gain Tremor Sense 15 feet until his next turn. Tremor Sense basically gives you the ability to see invisible and concealed enemies that are in front of you. It gives you blind sight of a particular range. And then you get Strength of Stone. A student of stone learns to draw strength from the earth. So long as he is touching the ground, the student of stone gains a +1 bonus on attack rolls, damage rolls, bull rush, and trip combat maneuver rolls, and to his CMD when resisting a bull rush or trip attempt. And then finally, this is another bonus feat all the way at the end. Stone Stealth. A student of stone becomes an outsider with the earth subtype. He gains damage resistance 5 against everything except chaotic enemies, and Tremor Sense 20 feet. The idea of becoming an earth outsider, really, really cool. So I like the fact that this is the end, but I'll be honest with you. When I read through what you're really getting for this, it does not impress me. Doesn't really impress me at all. If you all disagree or you've tried it and you understand what the real appeal is, by all means, let me know, but I'm not impressed with it at all. All right, moving on. Kitsune have Kitsune Magic, which gives you a +1 to the DC of any saving throws against enchantment spells that they cast. Also, if you have a charisma score of 11 or higher, you'll gain the light spell-like ability. The light ability is irrelevant. The +1 DC to enchantment spells, obviously, Kitsune are the ones you're probably going to want to choose if you plan to focus on enchantment. They get a +2 to perception, they get a +2 to mobility checks, and they get the ability to change between fox and human, but you just have to keep it the same sex. So whatever sex you choose here, that's the sex of human and fox that you will change back and forth between. They also get the opportunity to choose between a couple of different heritages. So you can either have a +2 dexterity and charisma while taking a -2 to strength, which is great for a spellcaster, it's all good. Or you can take a +2 to dexterity and intelligence and a -2 to strength. So basically they just ask you, are you going to be a wizard or are you going to be a sorcerer? And you'll be fantastic in either role. If you're curious about the class that is specific to this race, it's actually under sorcerer and it's called the Nine-Tailed Heir. Any Naruto fans out here? I am certainly one. I can't wait to play all the way through this. So you lose the ability to choose your own bloodline, which doesn't matter because it just automatically chooses the Nine-Tailed Heir bloodline for you. And then over time, your tails are going to give you additional usages of specific powers, all within the enchantment spell class. So you're going to be able to cast more versions of, you're going to have more castings of sleep or insanity or, all these various powers. And I think they actually might mix a couple of illusion powers in there as well. But basically, if you're planning to play as an enchantment sorcerer, Nine-Tailed Heir is really where it's at. And it's also really nice that this class does go all the way up to 9. So you're going to get the most powerful versions of enchantment you can possibly have. Now, quick note about that. I personally find early game enchantment to be a little underwhelming outside of sleep because, I'm sorry, not early game, but really more so mid game. Early game enchantment is powerful because of sleep. But when you get to that mid game levels and you start having to use some of the higher level enchantment spells, a lot of them are single target. So when you're looking at like insanity and some of the other powers like that, you can only target one person with it, as opposed to the illusion spell category, which a lot of the best spells you get from there target the entire room, allowing you to really shut down 4 or 5 enemies all at one time. Now, there's some things you can take that are going to make that easier for you. You can get Sorcerer's Reflex, which is a mythic feat that allows you as a swift action to cast any spells that's, I think, 2 levels below the maximum spell level that you can cast. So that's going to allow you to basically use 2 enchantment spells per turn as opposed to just 1. And then there's also an enchantment ability that specifically applies to Hideous Laughter, which usually only allows you to target one person. But if you take that ability, if you target a person and then it hits, Hideous Laughter will just continue to every enemy that's in the room until one of those enemies is able to actually resist the spell. So it gives you the ability to basically shut down a room as long as your own stats as a spellcaster are high enough to overcome the defenses of the enemies you're going up against. So those are a couple of ways you can try to make enchantment more powerful. Again, I definitely recommend that you check this out. I think it's really, really nice as long as you go into it understanding the limitations of enchantment. All right, and then we skip Dhampir because, of course, it's just the best. You know how I feel about Lich. So, want to save this for last. You get negative energy affinity, which means even though you are a living creature, you react to positive and negative energy as if you were undead. Positive energy harms you, while negative energy heals you. Keep in mind, you can take a feat called, I think, a Light Soul Drinker, something like that, that allows you to be healed by half when someone channels positive energy, which helps a lot for your clerics and healers to be able to actually heal you. Now, keep in mind that cure light wounds, cure moderate wounds, spells of that nature will still harm you. So it's only channeled positive energy that will actually heal you if you take that feat. Definitely worth taking in the early game, but of course, if you're trying to take this into a Lich, being a Lich is going to allow you to channel negative energy, so you're probably going to want to respect yourself at some point and then go ahead and choose a feat that's better for you by the time you get to the point that you'll no longer need to channel positive energy for any reason. You also get resist level drain, so you take no penalties from energy drain effects. Awesome. Absolutely awesome. There's a ton of enemies in this game, starting really in Act 4, that will try to take down, really late Act 3 going into Act 4, that will try to reduce your levels, level drain you, and keep in mind, they do not just focus on your front line. They are absolutely not above skipping, because a lot of them could do it as a ranged attack. So they'll skip over your front line and say, hey, you caster all the way in the back who keeps blowing us up, take 4 less levels and let's see if that's going to help out this situation. So this is actually great stuff. And then Undead Resistance, you get a +2 racial bonus against disease and mind affecting effects, both of which happen a ton throughout your playthrough. Mind affecting effects more so towards, again, late Act 3 and going through Act 4, but this is a great resistance to have. And then when you look at the heritage options that you have, of course, it works the same way that you're probably used to. You get a couple of bonuses to specific attributes, and then you have to take a penalty to another attribute. But unlike Tiefling, there's no way to take off these penalties. So you definitely want to read through it carefully and figure out what kind of character am I trying to create and what's a mix that I am comfortable with. And then in case you were curious about what is the class that is specific to Dhampir, it's actually under Wizard, and it's a Cruoromancer. I'm not going to go through all of the mechanics for this because I've actually already created a build for it. So I'll leave a link down below that goes to my build. You could just leave a comment there or on this video if you have any questions or need further clarification about anything. And that is the video that goes through all the different races, all the different backgrounds you can choose. And I figured it'd be nice to just throw in, here are the classes that are specific to each race. So hopefully that gives you all the information you need to be able to make an educated decision about what type of race you want to play. Hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a like down below, share this content, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will see you all in the next video. Take care.